Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and today we got a pair of older Chloe boots. We're gonna be resoling them, so come join us and check it out. So today's video, like I mentioned, we're going to be doing the Chloe boot, made in Italy on this one. So it's a little bit of an older model here, and these are very beloved by the person who owns these. The lady's boyfriend dropped them off, and he wants to have them resold and recrafted. Take out these little heel cushion pads that she had in there. Set them aside up here so we don't lose them. Make sure I grab the ticket. Okay, and so the ticket is going to go with them. But as you can tell, we've got the heel base here very heavily worn out, and definitely have to replace those heel bases. So we're going to be building up a new custom one because of the way this one's designed and everything. There's going to be a few things that the gentleman said. This little shoehorn or horseshoe pattern, sorry I can't talk, horseshoe pattern type piece he said doesn't really need, but let me see what I can do about that, and we'll kind of go from there, see how it all works out. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and start tearing this down. I'm going to try to shorten down my videos instead of going through and showing everything in great detail. Let's see how it works out. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know what you think of this new recording type, because it's a different, not an angle, it's a different size view of the video itself. So comment down below, let me know what you think of it. Do you prefer the really wide view to see what's going on around here, like Janelle over there in the background, or do you prefer a little bit more close-up? I always tried doing a little more close-up, but try to see how it goes from there with different types and experiment back and forth. Maybe I'll just alternate between the two view styles. But let me go ahead and start getting these taken apart, and I'll kind of start recording step by step and explain the different things as we go through it. Alright, so we're back here again. We've got the sole taken off. Now the dilemma is, of course, because these are all glued on and everything, there's no stitching, the welt here is going to come apart, which is normal. It's not much of a dilemma because we see that all the time, but we got to fix that up. There are little spots like that that come undone, nail pops out or something, so fairly normal stuff. Now there are no insoles in these ones here, so if we end up running little clench nails down in there and tack nails, we shouldn't have any forms of problems. But for the meantime, we're going to need to glue things up. So I've got my brass bristle, not a nylon, brass bristle, which is a little bit stiffer. I'm going to clean up some of that area here. It's dusty. All that dirt and grime there. So it's a good idea to brush it beforehand. Let's see, any other spots? Yep, there's a spot there. Clean that up. There we go. So we got that cleaned up there. Grab some more glue. And you kind of get the point where just gluing up all that welt. So I just thought I'd show that to anybody who's wondered about. Oh, looks like it keeps coming apart. Just wanted to show that to anyone that might be wondering what a glued on sole would be. Again, these are not stitched. Some shops, they would stitch them. We do it too. We'd stitch it if it wasn't stitched originally because it's kind of an upgrade for the shoe, which would be great. However, certain shoes and boots can't withstand being stitched unless they are completely rebuilt and recrafted and recustomized. Basically, you're having a brand new shoe built out of certain parts of the original shoe, and that's not what we're doing in this case. We are refurbishing and recrafting to like original settings. Of course, it's going to be a little bit better with that JR leather sole, but as far as the construction goes, we're going to copy it. So, you know, trying to stitch these would be great, but unfortunately the materials wouldn't withstand it. The stitches would be far too tight, far too dense, and they would end up damaging the boot in the long term of things. So sometimes we got to do it like this. There have been a handful of shoes out there that weren't originally stitched from the factory, which we have stitched, and of course there's always going to be those that we have to just contact cement them on, glue them on basically the same way they did from the factory, and this is one of those cases there. So we just got to make sure everything's all fixed up beforehand. Any spots I find that are coming unglued, I got glued down before we start sanding away. I also have the original soles still here. I've got these pieces there taken off, and so I'm going to trace out the sole first so that we can get it adhered to that so it can cure, and in the meantime I'm going to mess around while that's all curing with this. Usually we like to give it a day to really cure nicely, but we don't know what's going to be going on quite yet with our time frames at the moment. There's a lot of crazy stuff going around everywhere, so we're gonna play it by ear, and hopefully we get these all finished up soon, because these are supposed to go to somebody, to the owner, as a gift, as a refurbished pair. So we'll get it going, and I'll see you all back here in just a little bit. As far as those tacks that I was talking about, there's little spots like that one right there. It's missing the tack and ended up getting stuck to the original sole just a little bit too much, and during the process of removing the sole, sometimes these little tacks pop out, and so we just end up replacing them. But we're going to be cleaning up all the small rusted areas there, getting any of that gunk and stuff out during the sanding process, so I'll be ready for gluing in great care. So we'll see you back here in a little bit when it's time to continue on. Alright, so we're back here again. I've got everything, of course, sanded out beforehand, glued up, got the sole cut out here and glued up as well. Just pulled this out of the oven so it's nice and flexible. And then we're gonna go ahead and lay this all out. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to stick it on the press for a little bit, let everything bind and cure, and then I'm going to have to leave this overnight to really settle down and cure before I start trimming it. Otherwise it can start coming unglued in certain areas. So go ahead and get that taken care of, as well as the other one. And I've got the heel blocks right here started on, so I've got to do, I think, a few more. Let's see, probably one, maybe two more layers. So we'll go from there once those are cured, because I don't want to do another layer while those are still cooling off and curing, but we'll continue on with those tomorrow then. All right, so we're back here again. We've got the soles back on and everything, as well. Of course, sanded out this area here. We've allowed everything to cure, but got the heel blocks here, take out of the oven that I've built up with JR leather. Now the leather stack pieces that we use, they come out of a very large sheet, so I had to cut them out and basically make them a custom piece. we go. Now, as far as where this is going to sit and everything, it's of course not a science to it. It's basically eyeballed even from the factory. Like I checked, I mean the heel is not sitting perfectly centered on the original one and stuff. So, but I think I've got it pretty good there. I'll go ahead and stick this on the press and let it sit there for a little while before I run the gripper nails back in there through the heel base. So, coming along all right there. I gotta try to be a little bit quicker on these because I gotta get them taken care of for this weekend to be picked up. And the gentleman wants to get it for his girlfriend for her birthday, I believe. So let me go ahead and stick these on the press and I'll be back over here in just a little bit. Alright, so I've got the heel block on there. Now I've gotta nail it. Now I could run it on our our heel wheel that runs nails in, but I think because of the way this heel block is designed, since it's narrower, it's a lot better if I aim for the original holes because they're still visible there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but you can definitely see the original holes there. So I'm going to take my little punch awl like that and just make sure I get the holes to go down proper angles, because they're supposed to go a little straight but slightly at an inward angle, not too much. Otherwise, if I don't start these holes because of how dense the JR leather is, the nails may end up going a little bit crooked, and also they could end up snapping oddly. So, you know, it just comes to show how tough this JR leather really is. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to be using these 5/8 inch gripper nails, or not 5/8. These ones are 7/8 actually. So they're a little bit longer, but that's because we've got the whole heel block to put together, and they've got those rings around the nail to prevent them from coming out very easily. So this heel block shouldn't pop off on us all too easily. So let's see if I can. It's definitely a stiffer leather to have to deal with, though. Okay. Then I've got this punch awl here, so the nails will go down fairly good into the material, and then I just use this punch awl the rest of the way. Okay, so it's hard to see, but that one's not all the way in yet. I'm going to put it on the last and go ahead and touch it up after I get the other nails in, but that just kind of gives you an idea of the process that we're going to end up taking to put all the nails in. So I'll go ahead and get that all taken care of, and then I'm going to run a few wire nails in through the top of the heel, let you see what that's like. I don't think I've ever showed off the wire nail machine. The auto solar is what it's actually called, but I'll go ahead and do that from the top before we start doing the rubber on the bottom here. So let me go ahead and take care of those heels in there, and we'll see you in a few. So we're over at our auto solars. We got two of them. We've got this one right here and then this one right here. This has a shorter arm. This one's got the long arm on it, so we're gonna of course be using the longer arm. It makes it a little bit easier for us to get in there. Now, as far as auto solars, sorry, I had to grab a sample piece, but they shoot out a wire nail like that into the heel block. There you go. And it's just basically a wired one, and it's got a little bit of texture to it, so it grips fairly well, and it's going to kind of hold all these stacks together. Now, some cobblers end up running the wire nail over top of the rubber heel block, or the top lift heel that goes over top of the heel block, and I try to avoid that just because it's, again, wire nail, so it can end up scratching hard floors, things like that. Now, granted, there are times where I do use it on especially Western boots, because Western boots have a high tendency of, you know, just kind of getting torn off, in other words, or heel blocks coming apart, especially if they're composite. So the wire heel really helps significantly with that. But let's go ahead and get this all taken care of. And there we go. And they sit in there fairly good, but you know, still, I'd rather have the heel block nailed down like that, and then we just have to sand this out and then put the rubber top lift on there. But not too bad, right? So let me go ahead and get that sanded up and start gluing up the top lift so this can dry and cure overnight, so that tomorrow morning I can come in and finish out the rest of it, and we'll go from there. So we'll see you in a bit. Alright, so I've got the edging put on. Of course, it's a little bit dusty because I went through the numb keg and took off majority of the current finish off of there. Now, to get into all the nooks and crannies all around here and everything, and around the JR logo, because we try to save that as best we can. It doesn't always turn out perfect, but we try to do the best we can to make sure we save that gold leafing in the JR. It's just aesthetics, nothing major. But we've got our palm sander here, and usually when we do a new finish on the bottom, we have to sand out the existing finish to reapply a new one. And so we're not actually sanding the sole down thinner, we're just taking that small thin layer of finish, nothing more, and we're going to be replacing it with a new one. So I've got really smooth sandpaper here. It's 220 grit. I mean, I could go smoother technically, but it doesn't work very well because of how dense that JR leather is. I could use like 120, but 220 seems to be that perfect sweet spot, I've noticed, at least for me. But I'll go ahead and get started on that then. Oof. Forgot to put on my face mask. I just got my glasses on, so it's dusty everywhere. I'm coughing up little chunks of dust balls basically. But I've got it sanded off. I did nick that JR sole or logo just a little bit there. Yeah, hate it when that happens. But again, it is just aesthetics, and so nothing major. This back area, I'm going to go through one of our steel brush wheels here, and it's going to kind of clean up the area here, just because we can only get so close with that palm sander, and on top of that, because it vibrates quite a bit, it always keeps wanting to slide off, and so I have to make sure to be careful not to hit that upper. I mean, this upper will be able to withstand it because it's very durable, but still, rather be a little bit more on the cautious side. So let me go ahead and finish out the other one. I'm going to touch up that inside with one of our steel wheel brushes. It's just a little wheel that's about that big, and it's got steel bristles, and just kind of sands away at some of those areas very nicely. But I'll get that taken care of. And as far as the bottom finish, if I can find it up here. Where did it go? Ah, there it is. Gonna be using this stuff, Urad in the medium brown. I'm assuming sucks they don't write the color code on, or no, dark brown. They do write it, cool. But Urad, now Urad is promoted as a self-shine product. Basically, technically it's designed for the tops. I don't recommend using it. If you're somebody that has Urad, you might want to switch over to something else to put on the tops of footwear. It works great on the bottom because this has a lot of carnauba wax and a lot of those harder waxes, so once it dries it becomes very crispy, in other words. So on the bottom here it binds to that thicker leather. On the soles a lot better, but on the uppers it's a thinner leather, so you get all these little bend points and everything, all those creases, and those areas there with a lot more hard waxes tends to crack easily. So probably might be a good idea for you to change from Urad to something like Saphir, especially, or even Tarago, or just about anything else. I mean, something with a lower concentration of those harder waxes. I mean, Saphir does have, of course, their harder waxes in the product, but not such a high concentration as this. This is this is not very well made for uppers on footwear. I'm sorry to anyone that might be watching, they work with Urad, but it's not designed for that. Works beautifully though for a bottom stain on the soles, but that's just my recommendation at least. So let me go ahead and take care of this other one, and we'll see you back here in just a little bit. All right, so I've got to kind of try to finish this up quicker. This gentleman actually just came in, and he needs to go ahead and grab these, but we've got everything all taken care of. Looks like I gotta buff this up. Had to buff them up a little bit, but we've got the new JR stacked leather heel base, JR sole, and the GTO rubber combination heel. Got them all buffed up on the tops, re-edged and all that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some pictures and then finish out the video explaining a few other details that some of you may have a few questions about. So be back in just a few. All right, so I had to hurry up and finish those out to let the gentleman take them with. It's kind of one of those quicker things I had to finish out so you can get them home packaged up for birthday presents and everything. But I thought I'd finish things up by explaining a few details. So as I mentioned, I was going to try to do this little horseshoe shape here, but when I took it off, I did notice that the way they designed the sole itself, they have, it looks like imprints, and usually they do that. They have a large press that presses out that mold there. Doesn't seem like they actually sanded it out or anything. So because I don't have that machine, one, and two, it's definitely a little bit more of a time-consuming thing for a potential problem down the road. We do have to take into consideration the fact that long-term wear, and these boots definitely had long-term wear on them. I didn't want the new piece that we were going to put on to potentially end up coming off, and this one, it stayed intact very well just because it was sitting inside of that channel. And if I didn't end up pressing it out or tooling out a channel for this horseshoe piece to sit inside of, there would have been a higher potential for it to just fall out and then get in the way, a tripping hazard. So it was a number of things that I have to take into consideration. The fact that it might not happen in a week, 2 weeks, a month, and even a year, but with JR leather, our expectation is that these soles are going to last a good couple of years. And after a year, maybe 2 years, my concern is that this little piece here would start to peel up maybe at the toe or on one of the sides and can become a tripping hazard or, be a little more problematic. So I decided not to go through with doing that horseshoe piece. And I mentioned to the gentleman, he said, it's fine with or without it. He was perfectly happy either direction on it. But in the end, I ended up having to make that decision of not the best idea, basically. But the heel blocks, of course, we got the JR leather stacked heel blocks that I built piece by piece. And so here's the original old one that I was using. This isn't usable anymore for anything else, so unfortunately it just goes in the trash, and as well as all these pieces, but I was hanging on to them to make sure I can trace out patterns, the sizes and shapes and everything properly to make sure it fits well. As far as the upper on those, I ended up just using some Saphir Renovator cream, which, there it is, some of the Medal d'Or Renovatoire, and Medal d'Or Renovatoire, I guess I got to pronounce it properly. But just to condition it, because it's got your main coil and your lanolin and a small amount of beeswax. Now the beeswax isn't going to do too much for this type of leather because it's so heavily coated with a top layer dye. It's basically like an acrylic based dye, but it's very durable, I've noticed on that particular one, so it's kind of interesting. But we just brought out the conditioning a little bit, and then I touched it up a little in a few spots with some black cream polish, the Pomadier cream. Yeah, that's what I ended up using, the Pomadier black cream in a few spots, and buffed it out on the machines. So that way the gentleman could have the color restored on that upper, as well as restores nutrients back to the leather, so it helps get rid of some of those creases. Afterwards, we'll put some cedar boot trees inside of them, and they were ready to go for a birthday gift. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video of how we resole a pair of Chloe boots, particularly because this is one of the very few videos, actually this is the first video I've done with a leather sole where the sole is just adhered on, not stitched or anything like that. And I just want to kind of show and explain. I do have another video that I recorded a while ago for just adhering on a sole, which I still have yet to edit. It's a very problematic video I ended up having for some reason. It was just pieces ended up missing, so hopefully I can figure out a way to fix that and get that up for everyone to be able to see and view how we did those. But I'm not going to spoil that surprise if it works out. Just in case if it doesn't, I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. But this was one particular method that I really want to make sure that I ended up getting up and running for you, so that I can show how it's done. And these boots will last for many more years, and eventually, again, because these are not stitched on, eventually if you have a pair of shoes, they may start coming apart in some areas, especially where it bends and flexes right above that imitation welt, which can happen. It's a normal occurrence. The other thing is, well, and we can fix that up anytime. We can touch it up and pull it back and clean out the old glue and fix it up. The other thing I also forgot to mention, there was no cork filler. Usually these soles that are just adhered on, they usually don't have any kind of cork or felt or other types of man-made materials to fill in, because there isn't much of a void there. On Goodyear welted shoes, there's a gap. It's just a empty void, in other words, where you have to fill it in with cork or a foam or something else to take up that space, so you're not feeling the ridges of the Goodyear welt where it's stitched. Where an adhered one, and even some Blake stitch shoes, actually a handful of Blake stitch shoes, they don't tend to have fillers like that. Now if this one did, I would by all means make sure to replace that and put a cork filler in there. But unfortunately, when you try forcing something into a shoe that never had anything even remotely close to what it was in it before, you end up having problems. I mean, the cork filler would just fill in kind of like the centerpiece right down in here, maybe just at the ball of the foot, and it'll feel like there's a lump underneath, and that actually also forces the leather to stick out more here in the center, and then it just ends up wearing out faster. So there's not an even distribution of weight and pressure ever. So I just thought I'd make sure to mention that to everyone as well who may be wondering. Adhered soles usually don't have a cork filler, almost never. I mean, there's only been maybe just a few that I've come across that had some form of filler in it, but even then it was such a small amount that you can put it in or not put it in type of thing and nobody would even notice. I mean, we still put it in, if there was a filler in there, we're going to replace it always, but you wouldn't be able to even tell. So we'd just rather do it right the first time. So again, long term, our job as cobblers, if we love what we do, if we have a passion for our industry, those cobblers, we're gonna take the time and even do those things properly that you don't even see, and in some cases don't even feel it. We're gonna take those steps and make sure it's done right for you. Anyways, before I keep talking on too much, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Let me know what you think about the construction of an adhered sole. Again, with just an adhered sole, you can get it to look more low profile if you wanted to. It's not as bulky looking. There are some benefits to just an adhered on sole. One is cost. It definitely reduces cost. The other thing is that it looks a little more low profile, or you have the capability to make it look more profile as well. So let me know what you think. Do you prefer having that option, or do you want your boots or shoes or whatever it may be actually to be stitched? Granted, again, like this one here, I would have loved to stitch these soles, but they just wouldn't have handled it. So keep an eye out for things like that if you have a particular build that you like, and let me know what you think on it as well. If you have any other comments, again, let me know. Questions, I'll be happy to help however I can. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. If you're local in the area here in Denver, swing on by. We'll be more than happy to help however we can, or just to check out what we have going on here as well. You're more than welcome too. As well, if you're not local in the Denver or even in Colorado, in the Denver area or even in Colorado. Sorry, can't talk. But you could always go to our website, CobblersPlusCO. All of our contact information is on there. You can send us an email, send us pictures. You can give us a call, whatever might work for you. As well as through the website, you can print off the PDF form and ship out any repairs that you may have if you'd like us to work on them. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell icon for when we have our next video released. Hoping to get it all on track and, you know, really working, especially after this whole move here, and, you know, trying to put all of it together. Still minor details here and there, and still some tools that I can't find. It's driving me nuts. Spent like an hour looking for one tool like the other day. Like, an hour lost just because I lost one tool during the move. It's the shame of moving, right? You know, well, even if you're moving just next door, that's what we did. We didn't move clear across town. It was just next door. But anyways, you know, hope you enjoyed it all, and we'll see you next time then.